Mr. Whiskers was not just any cat. He was a very important cat, with very soft white fur and a very long twitchy tail that he was quite proud of. He lived in a house so big it was called a mansion. The mansion had tall windows that shone in the sun and a bright red door that was very grand indeed. Inside there were soft carpets that tickled your paws and big comfy chairs perfect for long cat naps. Mr. Whiskers was in charge of this whole magnificent place. His family had gone on holiday, leaving him to guard their home. He took his job very, very seriously, patrolling the quiet halls with an air of great authority. He loved his job because it was mostly very easy. He would wander from room to room, making sure everything was just so. He would check the shiny kitchen floor for any stray crumbs. He would inspect the long dining table to ensure no one had left a single drop of milk. He would even climb the grand, sweeping staircase to look out of the upstairs windows, his green eyes scanning the gardens like a king surveying his kingdom. The house was quiet, peaceful, and entirely his. Mr. Whiskers purred a deep, rumbling purr. Nothing could possibly go wrong in his perfectly tidy, perfectly safe mansion. Every morning, he would start his day with a stretch that went all the way from the tip of his nose to the end of his tail. Then, he would begin his patrol. First, the drawing room with its long, silky curtains. Next, the library, filled with books that smelled old and important. He would rub against the legs of the tables and chairs, leaving his scent to let everyone know this was his territory. He was the guardian, the protector, the lord of the manor. The silence of the big house was his favorite sound, a sign that everything was exactly as it should be, perfectly in order, and under his watchful eye. But today, the silence felt a little different. Mr. Whiskers paused mid-patrol, his ears twitching. He heard a tiny sound, a minuscule little scratch coming from somewhere near the kitchen. It was a sound that did not belong in his perfect, quiet mansion. A sound so small that most would have missed it, but not Mr. Whiskers. His ears were finely tuned instruments of security. He lowered himself to the floor, his body long and sleek, and crept silently towards the kitchen. His important job had suddenly become very interesting, and he felt a thrill of excitement. Something was amiss in his grand house. Outside the grand mansion in a tiny hole near a rosebush lived a mouse named Nibby. Nibby was a very clever mouse, but he was also a very hungry mouse. His tummy rumbled like a tiny drum. From his little home he could smell the most wonderful smells drifting from the mansion's kitchen. He smelled cheese, which was his absolute favorite, and the sweet scent of biscuits, and perhaps even a hint of cake. The smells were so delicious that they made his nose twitch and his whiskers wiggle with excitement. He decided right then and there that he simply had to get inside that mansion. It was a big risk, but his tummy told him it was worth it. So Nibby waited until the sun was high in the sky, and the big house seemed to be sleeping. He scurried across the perfectly green lawn, his little legs moving as fast as they could. He found a tiny gap under the kitchen door, just big enough for a very small and very determined mouse. He squeezed himself through, his heart beating a fast pitter-patter. Once inside he stood on his hind legs and looked around. The kitchen was enormous. It was like a giant's playground with shiny floors and cupboards that towered over him like mountains. The wonderful smells were even stronger in here, and Nibby's empty tummy rumbled even louder. He scampered along the wall, staying in the shadows where it was safe. He was on a mission for food, a quest for a crumb, a search for a morsel. He saw the big white cat, Mr. Whiskers, sleeping on a soft rug in the next room. Nibby knew he had to be very, very quiet. He tiptoed past a row of shiny pans, his little claws making no sound at all on the cool tiles. He was heading for the pantry, a magical place he had only dreamed of. A pantry, he imagined, would be filled with all the cheese and biscuits a mouse could ever wish for. He just had to get there without waking the sleeping guardian of the mansion. Nibby's nose led him straight to a big wooden door. This was it, the pantry. He could smell the cheese so strongly now, it was as if he could almost taste it. He found a little crack at the bottom of the door and peeked through. It was paradise. Shelves were lined with jars of jam, boxes of crackers, and best of all, a big, beautiful wheel of yellow cheese. It was more food than he had ever seen in his entire life. With a final determined wiggle, he squeezed under the pantry door. His great food adventure had officially begun and he couldn't wait to start nibbling. Mr. Whiskers was not a cat who believed in old-fashioned methods. Oh no, he was a modern cat living in a modern mansion. When he realized a mouse was inside, he did not simply chase it. Instead, he went to a special cupboard where his family kept all the latest gadgets. He pulled out a box labeled Feline Sentry System 3000. Inside were all sorts of clever, high-tech traps. First he set up a laser grid in the hallway. It was a net of humming red lines of light. If anything crossed the beams, a loud alarm would sound and a net would drop from the ceiling. He purred with satisfaction. No mouse could possibly get past that. Next, Mr. Whiskers went to the kitchen. He He knew the mouse would be after the cheese, so he placed a special pressure-sensitive mat right in front of the pantry door. It looked just like a normal little rug, but if even the weight of a tiny mouse stepped on it, a cage would spring from the wall and trap the intruder instantly. He carefully positioned the mat, making sure it was perfectly placed. He imagined the little mouse, so close to the cheese, stepping onto the mat and, snap, the chase would be over. Mr. Whiskers felt very clever and very pleased with his technological defenses. This was far more sophisticated than a simple pounce. His final trap was his masterpiece. He set it up in the living room, near the big, comfy sofa where he suspected the mouse might try to hide. It was a small robotic vacuum cleaner with a very special modification. Mr. Whiskers had programmed it with motion-sensing technology. He called it the Mouse Seeker 500. The moment it detected any small, fast movement, it would whir to life and zoom towards the object, sucking it up with its powerful vacuum. He switched it on and watched it patrol the floor with a quiet, menacing hum. There was no escape now. The mansion was secure. With his traps all set, Mr. Whiskers found a comfortable spot on the grand staircase where he could watch all the entrances. He felt like a general in his command center. The laser grid protected the main hall, the pressure plate guarded the pantry, and the Mouse Seeker 500 patrolled the living room. He had covered every possibility. He flicked his tail back and forth, waiting for the inevitable sound of an alarm or the satisfying snap of a trap. The mouse stood no chance against his superior intellect and advanced technology. It was only a matter of time before he would be victorious. Nibby, being a very clever mouse, saw the red laser beams in the hallway. He didn't try to crawl under them or jump over them. Instead, he noticed a small, shiny silver tray on a nearby table. Using all his strength, he pushed the tray onto the floor. It landed right in the middle of the laser grid. The lasers bounced off the shiny surface in every direction, creating a dazzling light show. The system became so confused by all the reflections that it simply shut down with a sad little fizzing sound. Nibby calmly walked right through the deactivated grid, leaving the baffled cat staring at the useless tray. One trap down, more to go. Next, he approached the pantry. He saw the little mat on the floor and knew it must be a trick. He was too smart to just step on it. He looked up and saw a long piece of string hanging from a basket of onions. With a little jump, he grabbed the end of the string and swung right over the pressure-sensitive mat, landing safely on the other side. It was just like being on a swing at a playground. He landed silently in front of the pantry door and gave a little squeak of triumph. Mr. Whiskers, watching from the stairs, couldn't believe his eyes. The mouse had flown right over his clever trap. Finally, as Nibby scurried through the living room, the Mouse Seeker 500 whirred to life. It zoomed towards him. But Nibby was too quick. He ran towards the grand patio doors, which were slightly ajar. Just as the robot vacuum got close, Nibby darted outside. The robot, programmed only to follow motion, didn't stop. It zoomed right out of the open door after him. Mr. Whiskers, in a panic, ran after his expensive gadget. He chased it into the garden, shouting, "Stop, you silly machine!" The patio door, which had a special automatic lock, swung shut behind him with a loud and final click. Mr. Whiskers was now locked outside his own mansion. Nibby, safe in the garden, watched the cat pawing uselessly at the glass door. He then scurried back inside through a different tiny hole he had found earlier. The mansion was all his. He explored every room, nibbled on the finest cheese, and slid down the smooth banisters. In the end, he discovered the most wonderful room of all, the spa. It had a small, warm hot tub that was just the right size for a mouse. Nibby climbed in, letting the warm, bubbling water soothe his tired little muscles. He leaned back with a happy sigh, the undisputed king of the quiet, luxurious mansion.